Hypothermia. One of the risks of being on the water, particularly in cold weather or cold water conditions, is hypothermia. Hypothermia is a condition created when the temperature of the body drops below 35 degrees Celsius. While mild hypothermia can be reversed, serious hypothermia can result in death.
How to prevent hypothermia. Wind, rain, and cold temperatures can all contribute to hypothermia. Therefore, dress appropriately for cold weather, including wearing a hat. You can recognize mild hypothermia when someone is shivering. The person may not be able to perform fine motor functions, but can still walk and talk.
Moderate hypothermia can be recognized when a person is in a dazed, semi-conscious state. They exhibit loss of fine motor coordination, particularly in the hands. For example, they can't zip up a windbreaker or do up an oarlock. They'll exhibit slurred speech and uncontrollable shivering. With severe hypothermia, the core temperature is very low, which is immediately life-threatening. Shivering occurs in violent waves, then pauses. This may occur if the individual has been exposed in cold water for an extended period of time. Call 911 immediately. Initial management should include CPR if the victim is not breathing or has no pulse.
Immersion in water. If you find yourself in the water, get on top of the rowing shell with as much of your core body out of the water as possible. Adopt the help position if you're by yourself, or the huddle position in a group to reduce exposure of the body core to the cold water. Once the person is in a safety boat, reduce heat loss by covering them with a thermal blanket and protect them from the wind or rain.
Further core heat loss should be prevented by removing wet garments and insulating the victim with dry clothing or blankets, or by others placing their warm bodies against the victim. Avoid giving the person any alcohol or caffeine. Hyperthermia. Hyperthermia is the overheating of the body, usually caused by high outside temperatures. Prolonged, vigorous exercise in warm, humid weather is the major cause of hyperthermia. In order to prevent hyperthermia, stay well hydrated before, during, and after rowing. Avoid drinks containing more than 2.5% sugar, drinks with alcohol, and drinks with caffeine. Avoid salt tablets or sports drinks with high sodium concentrations. If temperature and humidity are going to be extremely high, row early in the day or later in the evening. When not on the water, stay in the shade.
Heat cramping is expressed by extreme sweating in the large working muscles. Massage can provide immediate relief of the cramps. Heat exhaustion is expressed with cramps, tiredness, decrease in performance, impaired judgment, and emotional changes. Confusion, vomiting, and seizures may follow.
If you suspect an athlete is suffering from heat exhaustion, have them rest and encourage fluid replenishment. Heat stroke displays dry or clammy skin, and in extreme cases, the rower may lose consciousness. Get medical help immediately. Lower the victim's body into cool water, maintaining a horizontal position. Stop treatment when the victim is conscious and alert. Rowing at dawn and dusk. There are far greater risks rowing in the dark before sunrise and after sunset. If a shell capsizes, it'll be extremely difficult to attract attention and effect a rescue. As a general guideline, it's recommended that rowers should not launch any earlier than 1/2 hour before official sunrise. We also recommend that all boats should return to the dock no later than official sunset. This allows only 30 minutes of diminishing light, until it's too dark to effectively see on the water. More time may be needed to find crews a long way away on a river, a large lake, or ocean bay. What also needs to be taken into account is the specific local body of water that you row on.
Chapter 2. Getting ready to row. As mentioned in Chapter 1, a vital step in the prevention of hypo and hyperthermia is dressing appropriately for the conditions. The following are the recommended practices for athletes to dress in cold or hot weather.
Rowers' hot weather attire. Wear a long or short sleeve t-shirt for protection from the sun. Lightweight long shorts. Wear a peaked cap or a marine hat, ideally with cover for your ears and the back of your neck.
Liberally apply a sunscreen with a high SPF factor. particularly when on the water between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. when the UV rays are the strongest. Sunglasses will cut down on the direct rays from the sun and the glare indirectly off the water. For those rowing a single, don't forget to take your PFD to the boat with you. Rowers' cold weather attire. The key to keeping warm on those rows in cold conditions is to properly layer your clothing. The layer closest to your skin should be made of a wicking fiber, to take sweat away from your skin and transport to the next layer of your clothing. The second, mid-layer, should be made of a warm material, such as a fleece or wool. The top outside layer should be a windbreaker. Completing the attire should include wool socks, toque, and pokies. These are essential to stop rapid heat loss from your feet, head, and hands. Sunglasses will cut down on the glare from the sun, protecting your eyes. For those going out in a single without a coach or safety boat, a PFD is required.
For those rowing in larger boats without an accompanying coach boat, make sure that you have your PFDs with you in the boat, under your seat or footboards. When a coach boat accompanies more than one crew, there should be enough PFDs for everyone in the coach boat and all rowers in the largest shell under that coach's supervision. For example, a coach with an 8 and 2 4s must have a minimum of 9 PFDs for the rowers.
A whistle should be carried by one person in the boat, either the coxswain or the bow person in the crew boat, while the single sculler should always have one with them.
Warm-up on land. A warm-up can be subdivided into two parts, a general warm-up and a specific warm-up. In rowing, the general warm-up will take place on land, just before taking the boat to the water. This general warm-up should raise the body temperature until there's a light sweat. The aim is to allow for progressive muscle stretching after the body temperature has increased slightly. Rowers should not warm up and then stand around waiting to lift the boat off the racks. As the body temperature drops, the elasticity of the muscle fibers decrease, thereby risking an injury. Specific rowing warm-ups will take place on the water in the boat.
Rowing commands. The commands for moving boats on dry land are designed to coordinate the actions of the crew to avoid injury and to prevent damaging the equipment. Injuries occur and boats are easily damaged when moving shells from their racks, so the crew must concentrate on the task at hand, be alert to the commands, and move in unison to avoid these risks. There is a rowing vocabulary that may be foreign to you at first, but don't worry. Over the course of your initial rowing sessions, these terms will become familiar to you. These commands, usually given by your coach, coxswain, or the bow person, may vary slightly from club to club, but will include the following terminology. Hands on the boat. The crew will spread the length of the cockpit with hands on the gunnels, ready to lift and take the weight. Take the weight, ready up. All hands lift the boat off the racks. Walk it out. The crew walks the shell sideways, clear of the riggers, out to the middle of the boat bay. Split from the bow to the port or starboard side, as crew members go under the boat alternately to take the weight of the boat overhead and down to the shoulders. Walk it out. The crew walks the boat out of the house, in the middle of the boat bay, watching the riggers of their shell and the riggers of the other boats on the racks on either side. Shell on the tarmac. The crew brings the boat out of the boathouse onto the tarmac and onto the stretchers. Let it run. This is perhaps the most important command and one you should remember from your very first outing. Let it run means stop. Stop doing whatever you're doing on land or on the water. Over the heads, ready up. The crew lifts the boat overhead and align themselves under the center of the boat. Inside grips. The crew gets a grip with handholds on the inner parts of the shell or the gunnels. Roll it away from the stretchers. With all rowers on one side of the hull, the crew rolls the boat down to arm's length. Walk it back. The crew walks the boat backwards between the stretchers. Ease it down. The crew lowers the boat onto the stretchers, in this example right side up, to check the interior of the shell. This is the time the crew makes adjustments to their individual positions. Checking the condition of a shell. It is a good practice to check the boat you're about to row before you launch each outing. Key points to check on the boat's exterior before each row are: feel for checks or cracks on the skin of the hull. Check that the bow and stern compartment vents are closed and make sure the bow ball is firmly attached. The fin. Make sure it is firmly affixed and straight with the spine of the hull. After you have checked the exterior of the shell, it is now time to check the inside of the boat, with each rower checking their own seat. Each rower should check the condition of the heel tie downs to make sure they are secure and allow the heels to rise no more than 7 centimeters, or the width of the knuckles of a fist. This is a very important safety feature, as these tethers will stop the heel of the shoe and allow you to pull your feet out if the boat capsizes. Rowers and/or the coach should do a quick check to see that the riggers are securely attached to the hull and the top nut on the oarlock pin is tight. All rowers should check the sliding seat wheels and the wheel tracks to make sure they're rolling smoothly.
Getting the boat to the water. Getting a boat to the water requires all crew members to be listening to the commands given by the coach, coxswain, or the bow and reacting in unison. This coordination of effort will share the weight of the shell equally among the crew and make the load lighter for each individual.
Walk it down. The crew walks the boat down the ramp, being aware of potential hazards on the ramp. Let her run. The crew stops walking and waits for the next command. Standing on the side of the dock, they will launch the boat. Over the heads, ready, up. The crew lifts the shell from their shoulders to overhead as they step under the center of the boat. Inside grips. The crew grabs holding points on the shell's interior. Toes to the edge. The crew carefully places their feet on the edge of the dock. Roll it towards the water. The crew rolls the boat from overhead towards the water. Reach out and set it down. The crew reaches out with the hull in unison and away from their bodies to gently lower the shell onto the water, carefully keeping the hull away from the edge of the dock.
Getting into a crew boat. Getting into the boat can be tricky for the first couple of times. There are a few tips that will ensure it's an easier and safer experience. The first thing to remember is that the dockside oars are the first oars that should be put into the oarlocks. By putting these in first, you'll be creating an on-dock balance point for the boat, thereby allowing the waterside rowers a more stable platform so they can reach out and over the boat to put their oars in the oarlocks. As you're reaching over to put your oars in the oarlock, keep low and place your body weight in the middle of the boat as much as possible. This will keep the center of gravity in the most stable position. After all oars are in the oarlocks with the gates firmly closed, the bow person or coxswain will call the crew to enter the boat. As the crew enters the shell, they place their waterside foot on a bracing in the boat, and with one hand on their oar handle and the other on the dock or a gunwale, they carefully place the other foot into the boat, making sure that the shell's sliding seat is behind them, and with one hand on the oar handle, they place the other foot into the shoe and lower themselves into the seat of the shell.